Hi, what's up, everybody? You're watching On the Town. I'm your host, Tanya. And yes, you do hear feedback. Have no idea why. But be patient with us. So tonight we're talking about victim shaming. And I don't know if you know this, but most people are like 90% of people, according to RAIN, know their abuser. And often, when you know your abuser, like if you grew up together with them, oftentimes you'll find that family members and their family members will attack the person abused and make them feel bad. So we're here to talk about that tonight. And joining me are two of my very special guests, author and survivor, Elizabeth Graybill. Her book is entitled Unbreakable Me. Please go get it. And please subscribe to her YouTube channel, which we'll leave in the end. And also joining us is LCSW R. You'll have to explain what that one is. CASAC, trauma therapist, survivor of sexual abuse, drug treatment program, inpatient psych supervisor, Miss Betty Dudas. Hi.
Hello.
How are you both doing? Hello to both of you ladies.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us. We appreciate you both. So I guess what the first thing I'll do is I'm going to play this one video of this young lady, and then we'll dive in. That sounds good?
Yeah. Yes.
Sorry, Liz. I'm trying not to. Let's see if I can move it over to the side and go like.
Let's talk about victim blaming with a narcissist. A tactic that narcissists will use where they basically pull the carpet from underneath your feet. And they typically do this when they either have no control, they know that you're picking up their patterns, and they feel like they're losing their mask. Victim blaming is extremely difficult. And it makes you probably really want to go insane. Because after all the abuse and the chaos that you were submitted to in the relationship, after finally getting into the healing process and wanting to speak your truth and what you've been through and have others even relate with you, because that's super therapeutic and healing, the narcissist hates that. They hate when you find support, they hate when they lose control, and they hate holding themselves accountable to something they actually are. So the next step is to blame you, to now make it look like you were the person that was abusing them. So they might try to harass you, make you feel bad or guilty, plaster you online to friends and family. But remember that you're the survivor here. Narcissistic manipulators are fake, fragile, and they are cowards. Stand your ground.
Stitch this video and tell me of a time when you woke up.
I was sexually abused by a male adult family member for months when I was 13 years old. For 15 years, I pretended to have a happy and loving relationship with this person. But then I had a daughter. And one day when she was just a couple of months old, it clicked. All those years, I carried so much shame and I blamed myself for his choices. But holding and loving my beautifully innocent daughter reminded me that I was also beautifully innocent. I came forward to my entire family and he admitted to what he did, but my cousins, aunts, uncles, grandmother, and my own mother refused to cut their relationship with him. So I cut off my entire family and hired a lawyer to get justice for what he did. And today I live an abundantly full life where I'm on a journey to healing myself.
Wow, so that is a lot, ladies. Let's go back to our screen here. Thank you so much for joining me. So as you can see from two videos, victim shaming, that seems to be a very big thing. But what I wanted to do, Elizabeth, we're here to promote your book.
Right.
Unbreakable Me. If you haven't picked it up, please do.
Let's get a copy. Where am I? Over there.
And it's beautiful. And that's because this book, I can assure you, is so refreshing. It's told from not only a victim's standpoint, but a warrior, a survivor. Very important. So, because usually warriors and survivors can give you lessons that you need while you're in whatever you're in. So I suggest you pick up the book for that very reason. But I'd like to read, and then we'll go into dialogue and questions. And if any of our viewers have any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat for us, and we'll get to it before the end of the show. I hope you don't mind. Trigger warning. This piece is a little hard. I'm not going into detail, but just to let you know. Elizabeth's book on page 62. I was raped by my brother of my daughter's father. In 1980, I went looking for the person who later became my daughter's father. He stayed around the corner from me, and at the time, they sold weed. Back then, we had these rooming houses where people rented rooms. So I went over the one day looking to see if he was there. He wasn't, but his brother was. At the time, I didn't have a reason not to trust him. So he invited me to come in. I saw no threat, and we were all friends, and we all hung out together many times before. But that changed very quickly once the deal was closed.
Mhm.
Wow, that is very deep. So to dive into this, the incident you're talking about, how did the family respond to you after you finally did come clean about that?
Well, I think in the beginning, I believe in my heart that they kind of knew that he was a predator, right? Because I wasn't the first one that that an incident had occurred in our circle of friends with. And there was another young lady, and I remember years ago, she had said some things that had happened with him, and he tried to attack her. And I remember his sisters, who I'm still very close with, right? I remember at the time they all attacked her, and they all, and this was after my incident, by the way. So, when I look back at that, I can see why I didn't say anything, because I was watching this girl be attacked from the family of the person who was the perpetrator, right? And she's trying to tell, people this happened, and they're telling her, no, you're a liar. You're, that didn't happen. You're this and you're that. And I think that when I seen that stopped me in my tracks. Number one, I was not prepared for the repercussions of what I had seen her go through, right? I just wasn't. And then, I think the other part was, they had a big family. I'm an only child. I had no brothers, no sisters. So I was really on my own. And so, it was very, very scary. And I was listening to the girl say how she thought that we had this great relationship for, so many years. Well, that's kind of how I felt in that situation, because I've always maintained my friendship with the family, not so much him, but, when I would see him, whenever I did, I kind of kept my distance, but still never said anything. And of course, I had a child by his brother, right? And I never told him anything, because of the guilt and the shame and the remorse and the thinking that, maybe, just maybe I did something. Maybe I could have prevented it. Maybe I shouldn't have went there. No, just all these different things. And so it was difficult.
Well, Betty, don't you find that that's often a thing where, victims often will blame ourselves and say, well, I shouldn't have worn the low skirt. I shouldn't have went to this place. I shouldn't have did that. When the reality is that person was just a monster.
Yeah, actually, it's very common for someone to blame him or herself. To begin with this, Tanya, you mentioned earlier that statistically, survivors of sexual abuse the majority have been sexually abused by someone that they know. It's usually someone that they know, someone that knows the family. And that's why it's so difficult for the survivor to process it.
Right.
It can be a family member, a priest, a brother, a sister, a father, a mother. The whole idea is when the perpetrator actually even think about sexually abusing someone, they tend to look for someone who's vulnerable.
Yes.
They go by your temperament.
Yes.
They have the ability to even try to court you before they actually make that move.
Yes, absolutely.
And that vulnerability is someone who may be shy or someone who is having difficulty within their own life.
Right.
They pick up on that.
Yes.
And they take advantage of that.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut in, but we were talking about that the other day. And I said, most of the time, the percentage of victims who are sexual assaulted, it's always by someone that we know.
Yes.
It's very rare that it's
90%.
from a stranger.
Absolutely.
And I think that it makes it that much harder
to
come to terms, like you said, to come to terms with the fact that these are people you know, and sometimes these are people that you love.
Yes.
Your family, these are people that you are close with. And so, I think for me, in my case, that really made it that much more difficult. Because even being molested as a child, right? It was a very close friend of my grandfather, right? And so it was very difficult for me. I mean, how do you say that? It just made it really, really hard for me. Well, first I was young, I couldn't even comprehend. And then there was other things going on at that time as well, because, I was dealing with a whole slur of issues.
Right.
Going on in my family. So it was.
Well, also, go ahead, sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, the other thing is that a lot of times it can be generational, where it can go from one generation to other. It can go on and on and on.
It usually does.
And it becomes like a family norm where a child or family members are being sexually abused. Sometimes there are 2 or 3 or maybe 4 other individuals within the family that are being violated by this perpetrator.
Yes, they usually. And that's the thing. Whether it's in a family or whether it's a family friend, I often found that there was multiple people, and it was multiple people in the family. So maybe the sister didn't tell the other sister, but I can almost assure you, especially the younger the kid is, I can almost 99.9% guarantee you that there's another victim in that household if there's a kid in that household.
Exactly.
No, they wouldn't do that to their kid. Really? Because if you could do it to any kid, that tells you there's that piece that stops you from doing crazy stuff is missing already. That's missing. Because you didn't have a filter to say, this is a 3-year-old, this is a 9-year-old, this is a 12. You didn't have that filter. So what makes you think there's going to be a filter like, this is my daughter? Like, that doesn't add up. So that's why I think, ladies, it's very important, if you can, and if you're safe, to tell.
Right.
Because of a few reasons. It's healing, and it stops the abuser dead in his track or her tracks often. And that's another thing. Don't forget, sometimes abusers are women. I know women that were abused too. So it's usually men, but there are many women who go under the radar.
Right.
And that's
and you're right. And there's another price that we pay, right? Because psychologically, it wears on the victim.
Absolutely.
I'm going to tell you, psychologically, and I'm going to tell you, this thing had affected me in so many areas of my life that, like once I started my process in the healing, area of my life, it was almost like I started to discover how crucial these events were to me, being, trying to live in this world and function as a normal person, right?
Yes.
I mean, even when I had kids, I'm telling you, this is so psychological that it's so crazy. I still, till this day, I'm going to tell you this. When I had my children, I didn't realize it in the beginning, but I started to realize the uncomfortability that I had, even caring for my child when it came down to changing their diapers, to doing, like, I felt like if I was to go down and even wipe my child's behind, that I was doing something wrong.
Right.
And it really started psychologically messing with me to the point where I felt so bad to have to do something that that's a normal thing for a mother to do.
Right.
Like, I just felt the guilt, and I was like, oh my God. And, you know, I talked to somebody about that, and I remember them telling me, Liz, you're not them.
No, exactly.
You know, you're not them. You can't do this to yourself, especially with my son for some reason.
Yes.
It was really, really bad with him.
Right.
Like, I could not clean his private parts without having all this stuff come up. And and it trickled down all the way to my grandchildren. You know, they would ask me, Ma, can you change? And I'd be like, no, I don't want to do that.
Right.
You know, and it was not because I didn't want to, you know, because I just didn't feel comfortable touching another human being in that way.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, plus also it recalls the trauma, because I felt that way when the age that I started getting abused was the age where I started thinking back to that. If I had to, you know, I was like, this is really uncomfortable. And like you said, my therapist was like, that's not you. So it's, you know,
I should say a child, though, because that's my thing. It was really about being a child. I think it was really more so that they were kids. Yes. And I think that was the bigger part for me, is that I felt very uncomfortable touching a child. Well, in any kind of way, right?
It reminded me of my abuse.
Yeah, and it was like, you know, but why do I feel like that? Because I know I'm not that type of person.
Right.
You know, I never, you know, but psychologically, it's still there, right? And it still wears on you. You still, you don't want to be, and you fight so hard not to become what they are.
Exactly.
Right?
Absolutely.
Just like I don't ever want to be categorized as someone who ever did anything to a child.
Absolutely.
So it's
rough.
What were you saying, Betty? Sorry.
And what it sounds like, and what it is basically having psychosomatic reactions due to that trauma.
Yeah.
So let me give you an example. When a child is being violated, remember, we don't, as children, you don't have the ability to protect yourself. Right. However, there are psychosomatic reactions that would occur due to the trauma, such as having an out-of-body experience. You know, like when you're being violated, some children, what they'll do would like begin to think of other things when that's happening, because it's too difficult for them to process it. So their mind, like they'll have their mind will be elsewhere.
Right.
Another thing is bedwetting. You know, when children are bedwetting, people may think that they have just a problem bedwetting, but it's because of the trauma.
Yep.
Right. The other thing, when they go to school, they may go to school and they may daydream because of the fact that they're focusing on the trauma and they cannot focus on the classwork. And that's as children.
Yes. Yes.
When you become an adult, sometimes those thoughts become distorted or you try to block them out.
Yes.
Right? I know you've heard of the term of multiple personality disorders.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay? Yep. Why do we call it multiple personality disorders? Because when you are being violated by a perpetrator, you have to put on an act.
Yes.
Then when you are around family members, you have to put on an act.
Yes.
Over time, you begin to lose yourself and you don't know who you are.
Wow.
So that diagnosis has been changed from multiple personality disorders to dissociative identity disorder.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And and how it affects one's life is you're trying to block it out, and in the meantime, you are losing your own identity.
Yes, it's a protection mechanism set up by the body.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So, and that's a good thing. It's just unfortunately some people go far in, they can't get it. They can't get those personalities back. I don't know how to say it, but so while they protect themselves with Mary and Jane and Tom, whoever else came up with, that was great. It was brilliant because the body knows how to protect you. But it's over. And now that you've gotten out into the real world and you've gotten help, and the person's even dead or gone, you can't stop the clock.
I call it for me. I would call it like I created this fantasy place that I lived in, right?
Yeah.
And my family was great. Everybody was great. I was great, you know, and none of it was true, right? None of it was true because I came from a dysfunctional family. They were, listen, they were crazy, okay? They still are, you know, and you know what? And a part of me is too. So I'm not going to just put it all on them, right? But, you know, I did not realize that until my healing process, until I got into recovery, until I started working on myself, until, you know, the clouds started opening up and I could start seeing things. And it was almost like, oh, wow, like these people are not the people that I created.
Absolutely.
I created this world that was just like, what? Like, no, my family was. And you know what? And I think, you know, when I realized that, and you said it, oh my God, it's exactly what I did. When I started to realize that this was not perfect.
Right.
And there was a lot, I mean, there was so much stuff that started to present itself, and I started to see, and I'm like, oh my God, how did I get through my 40 something years in this bubble, right? You know, how did I even survive this? You know, and now, you know, reality's looking at me in my face, and I'm just like, whoa. That was like, I think for me, that was just, I could not believe it. It was unbelievable.
Yes.
You really have to say to yourself, those people are not the people you created, Liz.
Right. Exactly.
Protecting, because not only was I trying to protect myself, in a twisted way, I was trying to protect them too. Right. I wasn't trying to expose them. Right.
Yeah. Yes.
So now
let's talk about that.
Yes.
Let's transition to that, exposing people, because I don't know if you know this, but only 25 out of 1,000 sexual abusers will go to jail, or attackers will go to jail. So that's all the assault together. Can you believe that? 25 out of 1,000. So that means that there's a lot of people lingering around here.
Absolutely.
A lot of people. And that's important to talk about. Transition to that next piece about how, what'd you just say? How
well, listen, you know, this my transition was that is, you know, once I think that when you are, and this is just the truth, right? We survivors, yes, it's very difficult to tell, but when you do, we have to also understand, although it's freeing and it's healing, there are also consequences that are going to come behind that as well, right? Yes. Which is what I found was that I was almost being victimized all over again.
Exactly.
Hearing people defend the person who victimized me.
That's
and I'm
right.
thinking to myself, like, what?
They told me to get over it.
You know, and I mean, it got to the point where I told, you know, I was speaking with Ty just recently. I got a text message like 1 o'clock in the morning from the sister of the person who raped me, and was like, well, how come you didn't say this? And you're not going to disparage my brother and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, excuse me. I literally had to have a conversation. I called her up at 1 o'clock in the morning and I told her, don't you ever text my phone or call me again with this BS, right? Because you know that it's true.
Right.
And that's the end of story, right? That's the end of story. I don't care how anybody feels.
You don't have to justify.
And I'm not, you know,
people who abuse you or people who are raised with the abuser who don't want to believe you. You don't have to justify that.
But you know, the thing that really got me was, you knew this. I believe in my heart, you guys knew he was a predator. Because there was not one incident, 2 incidents, there were 3, right? That we all know of in our little circle, right? But they still tried to defend the behavior and the sickness. And you know what? And although they said they were sorry, they actually apologized for him to me. And then 2 seconds later, they're texting me. Well, you know, what kind of bipolar moment are you having?
No, but think about what that means, because this is a real thing. remember, if you grew up with the abuser's family or you're friends with them, or let's say it was my dad's friend or your brother's friend or your cousin or whoever it is, they have people too, right? Even though we used to see them as monsters, they have people. So they get caught in the matrix of a few things. One, don't shame my family.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Two, don't shame my family and embarrass my family.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And they keep going on and on, but because it comes back to spotlight them and not on the person whose life they almost ruined.
Exactly.
Still standing. So they didn't quite succeed, but they almost ruined. And as we know, there's plenty of people who are not here anymore because of sexual abuse. They're not. They didn't make it like we did. So we were able to build walls and protect ourselves. Some people could not do that, and that's why it's important for any victim to know that don't stand. I said you said it perfect yesterday. You didn't say stand your ground. What'd you say? Stand. You said something very prevalent yesterday, and I said, "Who's that for?" You said no, for the victim. Wait,
what was that?
Somewhere. Wait,
talking about.
Yeah, you said.
Are you talking to me?
Yes, I'm talking to you, darling. Take back your life. No, what did you say? Oh man,
what I said was, I had to learn how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
That's it,
right?
Right.
I had to learn how to be comfortable with being uncomfortable with my truth, right? And so what I also said is they do too.
Yes.
So the same way that I got to be uncomfortable with being, being comfortable with being uncomfortable, it goes for them too, right?
Exactly.
This is not a comfortable subject for anybody involved.
Nope.
Whether it be family members, whether it be the person himself, whether it be whoever. So, this is what it is,
Sorry, I'm so excited. Because I'll forget. Everybody knows that. Well, the thing about that is, what happens is also you forget that you lose once you tell and bring it out, like you're relieved, like, yes, finally got this on my chest, and maybe somebody else wanted to get abused. So that's the two great things about it. But the bad thing is, somebody like me that was a foster kid, I really thought that they were like my brothers, like that was my family. Like, I was so excited. I can't tell you, I was just so excited. Like, I added on somebody to my family. This is great. I was just so excited. And then for that to happen is like, so what does this mean for holiday dinners? And then you got to sit around the person for holidays, for every holiday, and pretend like nothing ever happened. My therapist said, it took me years. She said, "Why do you keep going home for Christmas?" I said, "Well, because I have, family." And it was just as a foster kid, it's just, I can't explain it. It's just a beautiful thing to be able to be around for Christmas or Thanksgiving, and everybody's there and everybody's talking and like, we're going to play a game. We're going to play checkers. We're going to, that whole thing. There's like precious. It's like a gold diamond stone for us. You know what I'm saying? So when that happened, all of it became black, like with soot on it. It became like, well, you can have it, but you're going to have to sit in this soot. You can have it, but you're going to have, and that's kind of what happens when you're a victim and the person is a family member, or if it's a foster family member, there's a foster family member, or which I consider a family member. So to me, it would be classified as incest, although technically speaking, not, because we weren't we weren't born out of the same parents. So technically, but in my head, it was a brother. You know what I'm saying? Yes. So that got shattered. So for victims, often their world gets shattered, because if it's your dad's best friend, what are you going to say? What's going to happen? How awkward is this going to be? You do barbecues together. You do family vacations together. They watch your kids, which is dangerous, but they do all this stuff. I knew a young lady, the father's best friend was babysitting since they were 5, and he was molesting all the little 5-year-olds since they were 5 years old, and they never told nobody. I mean, nobody. So when it did come out, one of the persons had deceased, but the rest were like, well, yeah. So they kind of like ignored it, and they still talked to him. I'm like, y'all are just as unfunctional as it possibly can get. This is so dysfunctional. I'm waiting for this car to crash into the bridge, because it's gonna crash. You cannot be around your abuser from 5 years old and be like, yeah, everything's really cool, because they already were displaying the symptoms of the abuse. Out as adults, they're displaying all these behaviors, like being very promiscuous, allowing just any old thing in your life or any old, situation to pop up, really dysfunctional, but because they were rich, you may not see it, but because, we could see it, all three of us, because you're a specialist and you've been in it. You're a specialist. We know about this. So we know, but the average person wouldn't know because the father was somebody, a big time, I'll just say, attorney and all this other stuff. So that's another thing. Now I'm just like, well, wait a minute. Is this going to mess with my dad's career, my dad's image, my mom's image, or my sister or my brother played football with this person? Now what is that? It's going to become awkward. So like you said, you have to be comfortable in the awkwardness. You got to, as Oprah says, you got to sit in it. You got to sit.
I think the biggest thing for survivors is getting a network, getting support. When you're ready to come forward, it is very important to have some other people, that you can turn to. Yeah. Right. Because you can't just go in this alone. Okay. Because you're going to find that. And I found that by sharing my story and sharing a lot of my truths, it got very, very lonely, because people will distance themselves. Yes. They will move away because they don't want to be caught up in that. Even with the racism that I went through in my family, I'm exposing something, and now I'm looking at my family, and you just said it. It's like, okay, now how do I? My uncle. Listen, my uncle just said, "Oh, I want a copy of your book." Well, you're in there because you're the racist. Right? So I'm sitting there saying, okay, I'm gonna get him a copy.
Oh no.
Because I know that this is uncomfortable. And it's not like I want to do it because I want to disparage somebody. Right? I'm not trying to disparage. But what I am trying to say is, listen, I see you now. I know who you are. Okay. I'm acknowledging who you are, and I'm telling you who you are, right? And you can't shut me up now, right? Because I was very silent. We all, because I didn't want to lose that part of my life. Up. But see, I think that thank God, He's given me the strength to say, hey, I got you. And so, I feel like this is the way. This listen. It has to be known. It has to be said. Or for me, it's not so much about them anymore. It's about what's helped me heal. Right. If they decide that they want to walk away, then it's okay today. I accept that. I accept it. I absolutely accept that. So it is what it is.
And like you said, it's important to realize that you're not alone. Every 2 minutes, someone is being sexually assaulted. Yes. Every 2 minutes.
Yes.
And a lot of these cases are not being reported.
Yes.
However, there's been approximately over 300,000 sexual abuse cases just in the United States.
Yes.
So in other parts of the world, they're not being reported at all.
Yes.
That's a great amount of people, that are being sexually abused.
Yes.
And, one of the things that is so important in this journey of healing is realizing that it's not your fault. It's never your fault.
Yes.
And that is something that survivors tend to have a struggle with, is blaming themselves, saying, I should have, I would have,
Yep. It's true.
It's never your fault. During that trauma, sometimes you're not sure what to do. So the blame is totally on the perpetrator. Totally. Even if you went along with it, it's still the perpetrator who did this to you.
Yes.
And it's considered a crime, actually.
Yes.
It's a crime against you.
Yes.
And you also mentioned about the family. In families, it's usually very taboo to talk about this.
Yes.
Sometimes it has happened to them, and they don't know how to deal with it. That's the main reason why family members either will not believe the survivor,
right,
or would not want to talk about it.
Yeah,
it's
well,
because they don't know how to deal with it.
Yes, but tell about the generational trauma, Betty, because we all know about that. Like you, usually whoever's the silent one, if the leader is silent, the children are silent. If the children are silent, their children will be silent.
Absolutely. And that's very common with even mothers. You know, sometimes the mother has been sexually abused, and when her child comes to her, that is a trigger for her. And the same way she responded when she was sexually abused, and that could have been 20 or 30 years ago, is the way she's going to respond when that child tells her that he or she has been sexually abused. Always remember that our stage of development becomes affected when we have been traumatized, especially with sexual abuse. Everything stops.
Yes. Yes. And Freud talks about that a little bit, about children in the different stages. I'm a firm believer in that. And I know that your sexuality is already developed by 5. So if you receive trauma before that, or after that, will depend on your whole outlook on relationships. It's pretty it's pretty
you know,
crazy.
And a lot of people, you know, we call it maladaptive behaviors. Maladaptive behaviors is due to what has happened, the trauma, and ways to deal with it. Some people turn to drug abuse because of the fact that they use drugs to numb those feelings, or numb those thoughts, because it's so overwhelming and confusing. Especially if it's a family member. You know, how do you, as the both of you mentioned, if you are at a family gathering and you see the perpetrator, or a family member is aware of what's going on, I mean, your mind is so inundated with what has happened to you, you can't even enjoy the family.
Exactly.
You know, so again, some of the maladaptive behaviors would be the way they are internalized. So it can be through substance abuse, your relationships with others. Trust is a huge issue.
Absolutely.
Right? Being overly protective of your children.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, to the extent where it's hard for them to develop because they're dealing with you and your trauma.
Yes. True.
So it's something, you know. Absolutely. So the healing process basically is when you do have a narrative, writing a book, or just being able to bring all of those thoughts together. It's part of that healing process. Because when you are trying to block out a trauma, over the years, those thoughts become very fragmented. Right? So when you are talking about it to someone, you're just trying to recap and remember those different, like trying to have a narrative. And that can be a process.
Yes, absolutely.
You know, so that's.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. No.
No, it is a big process. And you know what's so crazy? You talked about, you know, drug abuse. And so that's like my story, right? Because I found an outlet. That was my outlet. That was like my storm.
That's right.
That I couldn't see coming, right? But I found that relief. To make me able to, you know, to be around those people, because that was the mechanism for me. You know, when I was telling people I needed a drink, because I did not deal with looking at you with these eyes there on my brain that was not medicated, right? I needed something else to make me feel good, even about you. You know, forget about me, but definitely about you guys, right? So it was like, so that was, you know, and you said, like, listen, this thing, it is so deep and there's so many parts to it.
Yes.
It's
You
so
know, and it's like mine had so many parts to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And drug abuse was my biggest part, right? And until I was able to get the help that I needed in that area, I could not do anything.
Yes.
Okay. Because I was so, my brain was so medicated and so just, I mean, disproportionate. Like it was just crazy that I had to, you know, I didn't even think that I mean, it was years before I even knew what it felt like not to have a substance in my body and to feel, because I didn't feel anything.
Absolutely.
I didn't feel things for years and years and years. And when I got clean, it was like all these feelings were so overwhelming, you know? So it's very important. You gotta get people around you. You have to get the help that you need. Because this is not an easy journey.
Absolutely.
You know, a lot of people try to, you know, make it seem like, oh no, you're gonna go through some crap.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
You know, and you need to prepare yourself for that and to be able to deal with all those feelings that are going to come with it without trying to find something else to minimize or rationalize what it is that you're feeling.
That's right.
You have to be able to go through it.
Yes.
Because you can go through it and you can get through it. Right?
Absolutely.
But you have to be able, and you can't do that alone.
No.
Absolutely.
You cannot do it alone. Listen, I'm here to tell you, it is not going to happen.
Yes.
You have to get the help that you need. And I don't know what the problem may be for each individual, but you got to get help. You got to get help. You know,
what advice would you guys give to somebody? Because I mean, I like to focus on children and teenagers a lot, even though it's everybody. But I really like to focus on them because they are the ones that are in families that they can't get out of. They need someone to have a roof over their head. They can't provide for themselves. So what is something that we would say to them? Because every 9 minutes, a child is being abused. And that's crazy. Every 9 minutes, and that is every 68 seconds, an American is sexually assaulted. But every 9 minutes, they're saying the victim is a child.
I think the biggest thing for a child, you know, I think that it's so important for them to understand and to know that they are not alone.
Right.
That they are not the only ones who have experienced something like this. Listen, I thought that my story was so unique, right? That I was so afraid to share it because I didn't know what the reaction of the world was going to be, right? Because I never knew that I wasn't the only one.
Right.
The things that were happening to me, I felt like they were just happening to me. Like there was no one out here that knew or could understand my dilemma.
Right.
And people, listen, these kids need to know there are a lot of us out there. There are a lot of us out there who want to extend our services, who want to extend our hand to help, right? You're not alone. You don't have to do this alone, you know?
Yes.
And so they have to understand and know that, listen, if you tell, there are people out there that are willing to embrace you and bring you in and protect you and love you until you're able to love yourself again. And that's, and you know, I think that's important. It's important to let them know they're not alone.
Yes,
absolutely. And just to piggyback on that, it's so important to educate the caregivers. That's the parents, you know, the mothers, the fathers, the sisters, the brothers, everyone needs to be educated on some of the signs and symptoms of a child being sexually abused.
Absolutely.
You know, you have to be so aware of that quiet child or the child who appears depressed or that child who's very promiscuous. You know, when you see like a child acting out in a very sexual manner, that child is picking up on something and from somebody. So You understand? So that's why it's so important to be aware of these signs and symptoms in order to combat this trauma before it continues.
Yes. And also another one is when they're very angry and lashing out at people, bullying and being very violent.
Yes.
Being very violent behavior, killing animals. I mean, there's tons
absolutely.
Tons of signs. But I would think any social worker, any teacher, any doctor, that's another thing. Doctors never even picked up on my on anything that was happening to me. And a lot of children, I don't know how, how I thought all doctors did that with underwear when you're younger. They don't, with your parents there. But I thought they all checked, but I guess not. I don't know how that works. But I don't know how you not know a 4-year-old's being.
Well, here's the thing. When today in society, when we see children acting out, the teenagers that are in the juvenile justice system, you got them filled with kids, and everybody says, you know what, they just are bad kids. And the truth is that there is a story. There's always a beginning of someone's story. And
absolutely.
I feel that needs to be implemented more. Listen, you need to understand the beginning of this kid's story, because there is always a story behind the behavior.
Yes.
There's always a story, right? And I think that it's become so overwhelming even for our system today that, listen, there's just not enough people that are coming forward to really put in the time, because listen, this is a time effort kind of thing. This is not a quick fix. This is something that you cannot fix with jail. No. You cannot fix this with a pill.
No.
Okay? No. You cannot fix this. It's just, there is no magic pill for this. We have to, like you said, and I'm going to piggyback off of you, we need to educate. We need to be out there, and we need to be out there telling the truth.
Yes.
Okay? Okay, instead of giving people diagnoses and
exactly.
Listen, why don't you find out what's really going on?
Exactly.
Because 9 out of 10 times there is something going on.
Absolutely.
And so
show me a trauma and I'll show you a past.
Yeah. Exactly. And and as you mentioned with diagnoses like anxiety.
Yes.
A child that's been sexually abused, anxiety is a huge piece.
Switching all the time.
Yes. Anxiety, OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, right? Constantly washing. You know why? Because when that survivor was being sexually abused, they felt very dirty.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And also
sitting in it.
One feels a sense of loss of control. See, loss of control is a paramount to this whole dynamic.
Yes.
Right? When one is being violated, their power has been taken away from them.
Yeah.
So in order to heal from this, the goal has to be to gain control over your life.
Absolutely.
Because when we feel in control, then we can make better choices. We can we can feel some form of power.
Absolutely.
It's only when you feel powerless that
absolutely. There you go.
You make poor judgment, poor decisions.
Yes.
And that's why many survivors, or sometimes they can end up in the same situation. One can end up sexually abused not once, but many times.
Yes.
Why? Because the way they handle their situation becomes very common. They keep doing the same thing, the same behavior, the same outcome.
Yeah.
Insanity.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Very definition.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. Any last words, lady? Because I want to wrap it up, but I want to thank you so much. Any last words before I do my little plug here?
Well, for me, I just want to tell people that, listen, there is help out there. I just want to tell people that, listen, healing is possible. We can get through this and we can get through this together. Right. And you don't have to do this alone. You know, there are people that are out here that are willing to listen to your voice, that are willing to embrace you and to love you and to help you through. And so, you know, never ever think that you're by yourself in this, you know. So, yeah.
Thank you very much. That's great advice, Betty. Any last request?
I would say it's never your fault. Never, ever, ever your fault.
Yes.
And, you know, there's help out there. And it's so important to realize that you're not alone. And you are in control now. You're no longer the victim.
Yes.
You are a survivor.
Yes. And thank you very much. And I will wrap it up by saying, you know, another form of victim shaming is show proof. You don't owe anyone any explanation except yourself for your healing purposes. Everybody else is lucky if they get to hear anything. So you don't ever have to share if you don't want to share. And if you choose to share, no one can shut you down but yourself. That's it.
Absolutely.
Because you have to stand. And sometimes you have to stand for something or fall for anything. Absolutely. And if you're standing up for yourself, you have to stand your ground on it. You can't waver and be like, well, maybe. You have to know that you are in the right. There's nothing you did that was wrong. Absolutely nothing. So don't allow people's family members or if your family members to tell you you're crazy or you're wrong or like forget about it. Those are the worst things you could possibly tell a victim. So if you're a family member out there listening, and this is something that happened in your family or to some, you know, a family friend or something like that was the perp, you need to start learning to listen to the victim, to the family member, especially children, I mean, to anybody, but you need to listen. And even if you didn't accept it for whatever reason, the one thing you can't do is tell a victim that, you know, oh, that was 20 years ago. Why are you talking about it now? Like, that's just not appropriate, you know, especially when it comes to little kids who now may be 15 and telling. That's very, very inappropriate. And it will bite you in the butt later. Trust me. All things happen in the dark. They come out in the light.
Yes.
So you may not see it. I may not see it, but you better believe somebody going to see it. So whether it's overeating, whether it's drug addiction, whether it's prostitution, whether it's suicide or homicide, it's coming out. Trust me. And the is, the more damaging that will be. Go ahead. Sorry.
Absolutely. And I just have one more thing I want to share is that there are a lot of rape crisis programs that offers free counseling to survivors of sexual abuse, and it is free.
Yes.
So it's something that you want to inquire about because not everybody understands your story.
Yes.
So you have to pick and choose who you share this information. Some can make you feel worse than better.
Yeah.
So it's important to choose who you share this information with. And a trained therapist is one of the greatest assets to this recovery process.
Absolutely. And that's what helped me get through 30 years of therapy. But it took a while, but I made it there. And we can all make it there. Trust me when I tell you, I know people that have survived the most horrific types of abuse that you could possibly known to man, and they made it through. Why? Because they did the work. Nice. So if you're willing to do the work, you can always get through. The fact that you're alive, you can hear us speak, that is big, that's phenomenal. So, you know, thank you. And I want you to stay with us, whoever you are, wherever you are, tell it all. And Rain's number is on here, 1-800-656-HOPE. That's the name of our organization is RAIN. I love them. They really help women. So make sure you get help. You dial 311 too, right? Can't you dial 211 or 311 in Westchester? 211.
You can dial 311.
Yeah, 311 will give you access to any resource you probably need to know. If you can't think, just dial it. If you really can't think, dial the 911 and they'll guide you. Exactly. Whatever it takes.
And actually there's a number 212 577 7777.
Okay. That's
that's the hotline number, and they would be able to link you with a rape crisis program or a domestic violence program.
Okay. And domestic, okay. And domestic violence. Okay, DV. I'm just putting it in the chat so people know. Well, thank you so much, ladies, for being my guests.
Thank you
have
for
been listening.
us.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Podcast community, you've been listening to author Elizabeth Graybill and to clinician Betty Dudas. I thank you both. And if you haven't heard, ladies and gentlemen, please go out and get a copy of Unbreakable Me. I'm a lopsided here. Unbreakable Me.
Yes, I look forward to that.
Yes, Elizabeth Graybill. And Elizabeth, do you remember your YouTube page?
No, I really don't.
Going with her, like, what's the YouTube page? She's like, I renamed it. I know. Don't worry, I will have it on my page at some point, so you can go to my page and find out.
Her page.
Yeah, you'll find it. I think
go to my page.
Oh, you go to her. Oh, yes, Elizabeth Graybill. That's right. Hey, duh. Yeah. That's right. So I thank you guys so much, and I guess I'll see you again on Sunday. And I'll see you Saturday for 5 Black Comics. Ooh, we're talking about Africans, African Americans, and Jamaicans. Why are we not getting along? How can we get along? How can we make it happen? So make sure you tune in 5 o'clock on Saturday. And I will see you on Sunday. And I guess we'll go out with this. We'll go out with our ending. Thank you, ladies. You're the best. And thank you, Tony.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Great job.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And you ladies, hang out for a minute. Don't leave yet. Ready?